Hey, I want to talk to you about Twitter and how it can be insanely valuable to grow your business or your personal brand. Or if you're thinking about starting a business or you're considering building a personal brand, I'm going to show you why Twitter is probably the most important channel for raising awareness, building relationships, and ultimately leaving a legacy that the world remembers. If you're using social media to market yourself or your business and you want to get the absolute most from Twitter to grow your platform and amplify your message, you have to listen because the rules have changed in the last 12 months. Now, I know that might sound overly dramatic, but just stick with me for a little bit because I got a long track record, I don't tend towards drama, and frankly, I think I've earned this one. I've worked with literally hundreds of companies and individuals in nearly every industry. In the tech scene, I've worked with fledgling startups to publicly traded companies. I've worked with dozens of mobile apps and gaming companies. In fact, I worked for Zynga in 2009, and I was the first person to insist that we get on Twitter, and I convinced the whole marketing department that it was going to be a critical component of the social marketing mix. I've worked in the entertainment industry with independent filmmakers as well as major motion pictures, coordinating the social media strategy for a mainstream movie that starred Zac Efron and a handful of other A-list celebrities. Now, I gotta admit, it's pretty insane to think back to the time when I crafted tweets that were literally sent to tens of millions of people. I've worked with countless actors, from aspiring up-and-comers that are looking for their big break to well-known veterans who you've definitely seen on primetime television. I've worked with New York Times best-selling authors and serial entrepreneurs who've built and sold six-figure businesses, and ordinary people who have an extraordinary passion to build a legacy that matters. Now, the latter is actually my favorite. Now, when I first started out, I needed to convince people that social media was important. There was a huge majority of people that thought social media was just a fad, that Twitter would disappear just as fast as MySpace, and insisted that even when MySpace was popular, it was really just an outlet for teenagers and middle schoolers to mess around on the internet. I'm grateful that I no longer have to sell anyone on the idea of social media and it being a great way to promote yourself or your brand or your product. Actually, saying that it's a great way to promote yourself is probably a massive understatement. It is critical for the survival of brands in nearly every industry. Although that problem of having to validate social media's importance has been resolved, it has left new challenges for entrepreneurs and brands. So you know that social media is important, but what the heck can you actually do to make the most of it? What strategy should you follow, especially when there's so much conflicting advice circulating around the internet from self-proclaimed experts and gurus? Now, I'm going to address all of that bullshit floating around, but I'm going to save that for a later video because for right now, I want to dive into actionable strategies that are going to help you dominate on Twitter and grow your brand. Because when I look back on all the people that I've helped, the startups, the large companies, best-selling authors, and the well-known actors, the one thing that they have in common is a concrete strategy. Now, whatever industry you're in, just look at the top players for proof. The top 10% of your industry, they didn't get there by chance. They didn't fumble their way through social media and then land at the top. They created a plan and they executed. I'm about to share with you the exact strategies used by this top 10%. The tactics used to build their brand, grow a loyal following, and carve out a foothold in the top of their niche. More importantly, I'm going to show you how these strategies will allow you to maintain an industry leader position, turning Twitter followers into lifetime customers and brand evangelists. Some of these strategies might seem like common sense to you, but if so, trust me, you are steps ahead of the competition because many of these tips and tricks are deliberately withheld from you because, to be blunt, there's only so much room at the top. Okay, first things first, I just want to clear the air about numbers. The number of followers that somebody has on Twitter doesn't fucking matter. Kind of. There are two main groups of people. There are people who place way too much value on followers, which at the end of the day is just a vanity metric. It doesn't necessarily have any correlation between success or sales or anything, kind of. On the other hand, we have people that will swear to you that follower count should be entirely ignored and only engagement. Only engagement matters. So on Twitter, that is favorites and retweets and replies and direct messages and all kinds of stuff. Now, if I had to choose a side, I would definitely side with these guys. But the problem is, it's just not that black and white. See, the truth is, you do have to use things like your followers to benchmark yourself and measure success on Twitter. And on top of that, there's kind of this undeniable subconscious trigger, right? When we evaluate the credibility of an online profile, you're lying to yourself if you claim to have never have judged a person based on a vanity metric like followers or fans. Okay, so if I showed you 3 different Twitter profiles, right? And let's just say they are actors. Actor, 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 right? So they've all got a nice headshot. They've got a professional cover image and a clever bio, okay? But each of these followers are only different by the fact that one of them has 2 followers, one of them has 200 followers, and one of them has 20,000 followers. Now, if I told you that you had to follow just one of them, which one would you follow, and which one would probably get overlooked and left in the dust? Look, people are wired with a herd mentality. It is the reason why jumping on the bandwagon became a household term, and it's also the reason why, more recently, there is something called FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out. Okay? So how can we use this kind of basic human instinct, how we're wired with the herd mentality, to help you on Twitter? Well, it's simple. We want to make sure and seed your Twitter following with enough followers so that when a stranger comes to your profile, then they're inclined to follow you instead of just pass by, because they're afraid that if they don't follow you, they're going to get left in the dust. Okay, so what is the magic number threshold where somebody will come to your profile and then believe that you're credible or have the FOMO kick in and feel like they need to follow you? Well, I'm guessing that if you asked 100 different people, you would probably get 100 different answers, but I'm a simple guy. I like to try and keep things simple whenever possible. So I'm going to say that it's 1,000 people. Okay, so once you have followers, there we go. Once you have 1,000 followers, then it's going to increase the frequency that people find you, and then it's also going to increase the likelihood that they actually follow you when they make it to your profile. And the coolest thing about it is it has a snowball effect, right? So whenever somebody comes to your profile and then they see you and they follow you, and then your profile number gets bigger, then the next time somebody comes to your profile, they're going to be even more likely to kind of jump on the bandwagon or have the FOMO or whatever. So how do you reach, how to get 1,000 followers? Question mark. A little bit out of order there. So how are we going to get 1,000 followers, right? Well, the first thing that I like to do, really the best way, if possible, is you're going to tap into your existing network. Okay, so these are people that you already know, your friends and family. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You know, maybe you haven't used Twitter a lot, but you use Facebook a lot. Well, great. Then we're going to post a link to your Twitter on Facebook. Or email, right? I'm sure that you've used email. You have a ton of different email contacts. Hit up your email friends. And I wouldn't say email everyone at one time, but reach out to people. If you know that they're on Twitter, all it's going to take is you telling them that you're on Twitter too, and ask them to follow you. And honestly, with this part, I would not be shy about asking what you actually want. Don't beat around the bush. You are literally going to tell them, hey, I'm on Twitter now, and I would really appreciate if you followed me. I saw that you're on Twitter, and I followed you, and if you could follow me, that would be great. they're going to follow you. Honestly, you already know them. This is the easiest kind, but you have to not be afraid, right? You need to tap in to this existing network. And I think that a lot of people are kind of afraid to do it or embarrassed or something like that, but this is the thing. This is not a selfish act, okay? When a family member or a friend follows you on Twitter because you asked them, you're going to follow them back, right? Of course you are. And then you're going to have a whole nother channel to keep in contact with the people that you actually care about and want to keep in contact with, right? Of course. So this is literally a win-win. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. There should be nothing holding you back. You need to tap into your existing network, which can be a ton of different channels, to try and help you get as close to this number as possible, okay? Now, if you've tapped into your existing network and you still haven't hit your 1,000 number, that's totally okay. There is a second strategy that we're going to be using outside of this that is going to help get you followers. And not only can it help you get this first 1,000, but it's actually going to become part of your Twitter routine, okay? And it's just going to be part of what you do on Twitter to help continue to grow your following even beyond this number. So in short, what you're going to do is you're going to follow someone, not necessarily someone you know, but just someone, and then a percentage of them follow back. This is ridiculously simple. Tons of people talk about this. And in fact, a lot of people do this, and that's fantastic. But the thing is, they miss a couple critical layers, and I have no idea if it's because they're just lazy or they don't know how to do it more effectively. But either way, I'm going to show you how to make this work a little bit better, okay? So check this out. When I follow someone on Twitter, and I'll usually do that by doing like a keyword search, and that'll be for my industry or interests, and then I'll follow them. I won't stop there, because although following somebody on Twitter, will create a notification for somebody, okay? So that means that your face and your name and the fact that you follow them is going to show up in their notifications next time they log on and check their notifications. Maybe. And this is what a lot of people miss, because so when you follow somebody on Twitter, yes, it will create a notification, but if a bunch of other people follow the same person, what Twitter is going to do in the notifications is they're going to lump it together. So instead of just having a line in the notification of, Blake Jamieson followed you on Twitter, what it's going to do instead is it's going to show a few different faces. Okay, these are faces, pretend that's real people. It will say Blake Jamieson and John Doe and somebody else, and then 14 other people followed you on Twitter. Okay, or even worse, it might say John Doe and Betty Smith and Marcus Rideout and 14 other people followed you on Twitter, in which case I might be buried somewhere in the 14 people, and I would never end up actually with my face and name and stuff in their notification log, and that sucks, because if they don't see me, then there's a very low likelihood that they're going to follow me back, right? So this is something that a lot of people miss, but what you can there's no way to control when you just follow someone. There's no way to control getting into their notification log in a guaranteed spot. You have a chance, but it's not guaranteed. But there is a way to actually guarantee it. There's a second kind of strategy or layer, and this is what people miss, to do that. And this part is actually Twitter lists, okay? Twitter lists are massively underused and massively underrated feature. In short, you can create lists on Twitter that will include as many people as you want, and you'll add them to those lists, and you can make them for an industry or for job title, location, or an interest, or whatever you want. There's so many ways and reasons that using Twitter lists will help you dominate on Twitter. Okay, so for example, let's just say that you are an actor and you split time between Los Angeles and New York. Well, in that situation, you could create the following lists: Los Angeles casting directors, New York casting directors, Los Angeles acting coaches, New York acting coaches, Los Angeles actors, New York actors. You get the idea. So then, when you're planning your next trip to LA, you can focus your Twitter efforts on connecting and engaging and having conversations and building relationships with the people in your industry who actually live there. Now, I'm sure that there's been one time or another that you've signed on to Twitter and you've been in your main tweet feed, the homepage, and it's overwhelming. It's noisy because there's so many different tweets and people linking to different things and saying different quotes, and it's kind of a mess. There's a lot of noise, and it can be really overwhelming and really distracting. But Twitter lists will help you cut through the noise and actually create feeds that are effective for you, right? Because what you can do with lists is you can actually browse the tweets of just the people that you've put on the list. So this might be casting directors in Los Angeles, like we talked about. It could be writers in Sarasota, Florida. It could be video producers in Edmonton, Alberta. Look, you do have to find the users once, and then you have to add them to the list manually. And I know that might seem like a lot of work, but I promise you it's worth it. And there's another benefit, which actually, it goes back to the original goal, okay, of getting people to follow us back, right? This is what we want. We want to get the 1,000 followers. We want to increase this percentage where people follow us back. So when you add somebody to a list, it actually creates, what do you know, a notification. It is a different notification and a separate notification from this notification where you follow them. Instead, the notification would say, Blake Jamieson added you to the list, Los Angeles casting directors, or whatever the list is. And that notification sits entirely on its own with just me, or you. Yeah, I'm smiling, happy, because I have my own notification. It will show up in their notifications, guaranteed, every time, no matter what, in your control. Now this is huge because it will significantly increase the times that you get into their notifications. So even if you did show up in the following, you'll show up again with adding them to the list. And then that's going to increase the likelihood that they follow you back. Remember, that is ultimately the goal. You want to, when somebody sees you and finds you, oftentimes in the notifications, goes to your profile, we want to make sure that they follow you. So there's actually one more way to layer it, kind of a third layer, which is going to be a tweet. What do you know? We're on Twitter. You're going to tweet to them and say hello, introduce yourself. This is going to guarantee another notification, and you want to say hello, say that you like their work or that you're coming to Los Angeles or whatever. Now, it's important here when you do tweet to them, you really want to make sure that it's obvious that you put in effort and you put in work and it's a real tweet. It's not some copy-pasted thing. It's not some automated thing. You are a real human, and you're reaching out to them to say hello. So the easiest way to do that is to comment on something on their profile. But it's really up to you. You can say anything you want. I just recommend kind of personalizing it a little bit and then introducing yourself, okay? So to recap here, what we're going to do is we are going to follow somebody, right? That is going to create a first notification probably. And then we're going to add them to a list. Okay, that's going to create a notification definitely. And then we're going to tweet to them, and it's going to be personalized and human, and that is going to create a notification and a good first impression guaranteed. So if you do all those things, then the chance here that they follow you back is so much increased. And of course, it does take more time and effort than just going through and following people. You know, you could go through on Twitter and just follow people. Click, 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 click. Following. Well, that's fine, but the notification's probably going to get buried, and then it's going to be basically a waste of time. Like, sure, you followed way more people, but who cares? Because people didn't see you, and then they didn't feel connected to you because they didn't actually hear from you, and so they didn't follow you back. So it was a total waste of time. So you can significantly increase the follow back rate if you just put in a little bit of time and be human. I totally understand that all of this, you know, following and then adding to a list and sending them a tweet for every single person, it sounds like a lot of work. And, well, it is some work. But I promise you it's worth the effort. I assure you that if you do everything you can to get into their notifications and you put in the time and you show people that you are willing to put in effort to build relationships, then amazing things are going to start happening for you and your business. In fact, as I film this, it's kind of cool because the guy behind the camera, is my friend Marcus. And Marcus and I connected on Twitter about 4 months ago, and we had never met in real life, in person, until this past weekend. He flew here from Alberta, Canada, and I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and he came to hang for a week, and all of that happened because of one tweet. Okay, so we're going to go back to Twitter lists for just one more second. Like I said before, you can make your lists either public or private. Okay, so the public lists, this is what we're going to do, trying to get the follow backs, because it's going to create a notification. So this does not have a notification. For private lists, which is why we're not going to use them to try and get follow backs, but there are actually some really cool ways and uses for private lists. So think about this. Every single industry, every single niche has these really influential people with tremendous amounts of reach and influence, and basically if they say something, then that something goes. And those are the kind of people that have the power to, if they tweeted you or they followed you or give you a shout out or retweet or whatever, I mean, that's going to make things better for you. It's going to make you look more credible. It's going to be cool. So what I like to do, and I call these people, by the way, kingmakers. Put that, kingmakers. Right? Because, I mean, according to the internet, that's kind of what they are. They're kingmakers. They can endorse something, and then it becomes more credible and more influential itself. And so it's going to be really important to find and network and connect with these kingmakers eventually on Twitter to help your credibility and your influence and your ability to attract people and customers. But you might not necessarily want to just say creating a Twitter list and say the most influential people in my industry, my targets for connecting or whatever, and then make that like a public list. You would definitely, I like to do this as a private list, and I literally will call it Kingmakers. And so it might be Kingmakers in a particular niche. So social media Kingmakers, and then I would add people to that list for all different industries. And the cool thing there is, like I said, Twitter lists can help you keep your tweet feed a little bit more organized, but what you can do there is you can actually look at a feed of only the most influential people in your industry. And this is tremendously effective and helpful when you're trying to build relationships with those people, because with these kind of people, they're going to have a ton of followers already, right? They get a ton of notifications, just doing the strategy we talked about before where you just follow them, you add them to a list, and then you send them a tweet. Sure, you should do that, but that might not be enough to get their attention. They still might just not see the notifications because it's buried in so many notifications. Well, this is where if you add them to a private list, and so then it's an endurance race. It's not a sprint, okay? So over a long period of time, you are doing things like you are retweeting them, you are replying to their things, maybe you're tweeting out quotes by them, whatever. It's an endurance race, like I said, and over long periods of time, you're going to be engaging with them, and at the same time, you're also going to see the type of projects that they're working on. You're going to see how they communicate on social media, and this is going to help you kind of create the strategy that we're going to come up with for you so that you too can become an expert in your industry. So using a private list, I highly recommend creating a list of kingmakers, and you can call it whatever you want, for your industry, and start to pay attention to what they're doing. Check out what projects they're working on, what they're talking about, what they're tweeting about, and also look at their habits on Twitter. How frequently are they tweeting? Is it links? Is it quotes? Just start taking note of that. I promise you this is going to make a little bit more sense in a later video, but I want you to use both public and private lists on Twitter. You're just going to use them a little bit differently, okay? So in the next video, we're actually going to dive a little bit more into like the strategy of the content, which is actually what you're putting out on Twitter. And obviously, a follower count, getting a bunch of followers is great, but if you don't have kind of a strategy for content, or you don't put out content, then pretty useless, right? So the first step is obviously going to be starting to grow your audience, but then we definitely want to make sure that you're ready so that when the audience grows, you're putting out content that keeps them coming back and begging for more. So we're going to go over the strategies that I've found as kind of common threads through all the different people that I've worked with, through the New York Times bestsellers, the well-known actors, the big brands, all of those kind of people use a concrete strategy, and we're going to use a lot of those same elements to create a strategy for you. But I don't want to overwhelm you. Honestly, this is way longer than I thought it was going to be when I first started shooting this video, but I'm just super excited and super passionate about this kind of thing. So if you've made it this far, you probably fall into one of three categories. You're already using Twitter to promote yourself or your brand, but you're not exactly sure if what you're doing is really the most efficient way to use Twitter. Or maybe your follower count isn't growing as fast as you'd like, and you feel like you're spinning your wheels or tweeting out to deaf ears. If this is the case, then I'm really excited to share the next few videos with you, because I'm going to share the exact strategy, the blueprint that I've used to grow my followers to over 30,000 people and increase my engagement and turn Twitter into the primary traffic source that I use for my personal website. Or you might fall into a little bit different category. It's very possible that you've been sold on the idea that Twitter is something that you can automate, that you can set it up in a certain way, and then it becomes kind of this set and forget way to promote yourself. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is just not true. Trust me, I have done it both ways. I've tried to automate as much as I could, and it just doesn't work. If you want to grow a tribe with other humans like yourself, then you're going to go ahead and need the human touch when it comes to building those relationships. And in the next few videos, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. And then there's the third category. Maybe you've automated your Twitter until now, or avoided using Twitter altogether because you feel like you just don't have enough hours in the day. Look, I get it. You're busy. I'm busy. Life is busy, and Twitter should not feel like a full-time job, and it should not feel like it's taking you hours and hours every day or every week. I've got a little secret to share with you. I have literally spent less than 10 minutes a day on Twitter, and that's been the case for the past 6 months. But during that time period, I've actually been able to grow my following by 25,000 people and increase my engagement. Look, Twitter is not that time consuming if you're efficient, if you know where to look, what to do, and how to do it. Twitter can be the best way to promote yourself or your business online. So that is exactly what I want to show you how to do. In the next video, I'll be talking about your content strategy. After all, building a following isn't that useful if that's all you do. See, leaders in every industry who use Twitter to grow their brand have a strategy in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a very similar strategy just for you. But first, what I would love for you to do is scroll down to the bottom to the Facebook comment section and share something about yourself. This could be what industry you're in, or what your goals are for Twitter, or what your biggest challenge has been so far, or what you're most excited about. And if you also leave a link to your Twitter account, I will personally follow you, and I'm gonna guess that a bunch of the other people that are reading the comments are gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna be reading every single comment and responding to as many of them as I can, so scroll down right now, go ahead and leave a comment below.